Hi everyone, it's Vanessa here from Talking the Talk Sex and Health Education, and I am very thrilled to have with me Carly McGoran and Marty McGoran from, I forgot the name of your business, Inform and Empower.
That's the one.
I'm thrilled to have you here as guests today to interview, because I really want to pick your brains about the cyber safety world that you both work in, and put it in the context of sexuality education for kids, because parents struggle a lot with cyber safety and sexuality education. So without further ado, I'm just going to get you to, even though we're in the show notes and related to anywhere where people can see this interview will be links to both of our businesses, could you both give us a bit of a rundown on what the name of your business is, what your position is, and a bit of background about how you got to this point? If you work for yourself, how did you get here, and what sort of background work led you to this doing this work? Who wants to go first?
Go, Marty.
Ooh, I think our story starts a little bit with me, so I might go there. Thanks for having us, Vanessa. It's great to chat and hopefully share both all of our collective thoughts on what is such a huge topic, and the crossover of our two worlds, sexuality education and the online education. In answer to your question, my background is as a primary school teacher and have been teaching for about 12 years now. In the more recent years, it's been really in the digital space within schools. So looking at how they use devices one-to-one, how their teaching and learning shifts into the online space. But with that, many years ago came that real awareness of how the online world presents just as many challenges as it does the opportunity and exciting things that we love in school. So I began presenting around online safety just to my own school community here in Melbourne, and a couple of neighbouring schools, a kindergarten and a couple of schools nearby. And I really was attracted to probably the feedback from parents around, wow, there's so much that I just didn't know. And that really, I guess, created my energy for presenting to parents. And then from that, I quickly understood that I was only painting half the picture as a teacher, someone with lots of content knowledge, but without the parenting side. So I'm not a parent myself. I don't go home to a family full of kids and the challenges that come with that. So our work in this online space became a partnership, Carly and I, through lots of sort of conversations, Carly being my sister, and having kids at the time in primary school. We were chatting lots, and she was asking curious questions to me around the online space and what her kids were up to. And with her professional background, as she'll share with you in a moment, we found the combination was, we thought a little bit of a different way to share with parents some things that would help set their family up for success, that wasn't just the tried and tested, this is what you should do, this is what you shouldn't do. We hope to come at it from that different approach where I can share as much intel and info and where to go to information. And I now work with the kids as well. So we started out just working with parents and seeing how important it is that it's one thing the kids, one thing the parents have in this content, but the parents and also the teachers. So in a nutshell, my work is with students, teachers and parents, but I might throw to Carly because then she joined our partnership in a really important space, which I now feel could not do any of what I do without Carly's contribution. So you can tell your part of the story, Carly, how you joined in yourself. It might be a bit different, is it?
Thanks. I guess as I always say, the two main roles that I have in my life, certainly number one, the hat that I never ever take off as a parent of 3 primary and secondary school age children. So the words, and it's never been truer in the last week, actually, living and breathing, all managing all things digital with my kids. Then my other hat, working as a psychologist with children, young people and families for the last 20 years. So I started my work in the Department of Human Services Child Protection. So I was working with really vulnerable children in very vulnerable families. And then in Anglicare, a community agency, again with high risk, complex needs families, and then been in private practice working with families for the last sort of 15 years. Very acutely aware of the need for, as Marty said, not just the information, but then for parents and young people to be empowered to make healthier, safer decisions. So yeah, that's where Marty does the informing element. I am not a tech savvy person, but know what I need to know to keep, my kids being across it as much as I can. But then I talk about things like the boundaries, the supervision, the conversation, big part of it, the communication with kids about all things online. So I guess that's me in a nutshell with my work. So I currently work with clients. So I do that work with Marty in schools, and then see clients in a private practice a couple
And are
of
your
days.
clients children as well as adults?
Yeah, so lots of, not so much younger children nowadays. I've bet definitely the young adolescents and adults and families for sure. So being all things cyber, social media, all of that, sexuality, huge topics for all my clients in one way or another. Yep.
Right. So that comes up generally within your clients in your psychology practice, sexuality. That's right. That's because human sexuality is part of who we are, and it will always come up in everything we do.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then when we use online resources, it's going to come up there as well. Thank you both. That's brilliant. And I love this whole school approach. I've found the same, that we need to teach the adults and support adults as well as the kids. Okay, so with that, we just started already, you've already touched on it. What do you both think are the potential threats to sexuality, health and wellbeing of children in your work? And just for people who may not have listened to my information before, if you're wondering what sexuality has to do with children or childhood, please go and have a look at my website, and you'll get an understanding that sexuality is relevant to all humans from birth to death. And so there is expectations around childhood sexuality, so and well-being. So for you two both, what do you see in your work every day where you think sexuality impacts on that cyber safety side of things?
Well, I guess the crossover, Vanessa, is something I was even reflecting on with Carly just in the past few days. Is in my original interest in the online space, it was how I can do amazing things in the classroom. And then, as I said, the challenges that came with it. And I didn't initially see the link to how that online space was influencing kids' sexuality until I became more immersed in it and started being aware of conversations with Carly and other resources, including your own, around how those influences. And now it pieces together really clearly in my mind that the young people I see in primary schools, their exposure to social media so far beyond the years when they're ready for it. We're talking grade 1s and 2s using TikTok and Snapchat and Instagram. That exposure, social media has such a huge sexuality and a lens within there where it's hypersexualized. That doesn't need to be said any more than it already has been. But I guess when I see young kids and the decisions that families may or may not be making influencing the young people, I'm starting to see now that huge shift to the internet being the sexuality educator for a lot of young kids. And I know I've heard you say this before, Vanessa, around that is obviously that what we want to avoid is young people being educated sexuality wise by the internet and TikTok and social media and songs, that it's the parent space. So the online world being so entrenched in sexuality education is something I've seen now, and I guess Carly sees it firsthand as well.
Well, we could call that online education sex ed. People can go and see my work to see why I don't like the word sex ed, and we shouldn't call it sex ed because it has hardly anything to do with sex, whatever sex is. Human sexuality education should be from home and school being the classroom. So Carly, in your experience with those threats, when you have clients coming in the door, where do you think kids these days or families these days get most of their sexuality education from? Do you, where do you...
Sadly and disturbingly, huge amount of it comes from online. So I kind of see, because I see clients from, primary school age all the way up into adulthood, I talk to the young adults who are reflecting on kind of like the fallout of not having had access to good information about positive and healthy, all things related to sexuality, haven't had that. And so the fallout of that is them not having information that they needed when they needed it. having picked up some really distorted ideas around sexuality and relationships, thanks to overexposure to pornography from a very young age. All those sorts of things playing out for them. And then the young people that I talk to, where they don't feel like they've got avenues to talk to their parents, they don't feel like they can have those conversations with their parents about all things sexuality. So they will literally Google and look up things, and then they get a variety of information. Then they stumble on things that they didn't really want to see or hear, or they're relying on things their friends have said, but again, not having anyone to check in with and say, hey, so-and-so mentioned this is what happens when you're masturbating. Is that really it? They're not feeling comfortable going home, having those conversations with parents. So that's kind of the full spectrum that I see. So just one of the biggest parts of my roles is just opening up those conversations with clients, as I do with my own kids.
For their families, and having those conversations. And we're not going to leave people high and dry here. You know, we'll give lots of resources of how people can say, yeah, well, that's all very well to say that, but how do I talk to my kids about this? So this actual podcast is going to give a bit of that, but there's so much more of it in both of our websites to have a look at that information. You've hit the nail on the head there, both of you, in the sense that their sexuality education is coming from the online world, where it should have come from home, and it should have come from earlier. And here is a bit of a tip for adults. People say to me, well, how much information? When should we give it? So they are getting a sexuality education every day, whether you like it or not, from media and the playground and advertising and popular culture and pornography and all of those things, and TikTok and Snapchat. But it's not the one you want them to have. So parents and adults need to think about, who do you want to be the main educator of your child about each topic related to sex and sexuality. So people should really have a bit of a reflection. Who do they want to be the person that tells them about that particular topic, what sex is, all those sorts of things. And as you said there, Carly, it's about the positive, joyful approach, not the fear and danger approach, which many of us adults grew up with. And I find that many adults have never had a sexuality education themselves. They don't have the language, the confidence. Add to that all the layers of stuff in their head, not understanding cyber safety and all those sort of things. So what can you tell me both what you think would be beneficial for sexuality information that you would want kids to have, rather than them getting it online, Marty? What would you want those kids? You're in the classroom and you're telling them about cyber safety. What are they lacking? What would you have hoped for them that they had from a sexuality education point of view?
Yeah, I think from the student perspective and the teacher, I think students are in a classroom in primary school, which is the area that I work predominantly with, teachers who I feel are so out of their league in the online world. I would love to shift the momentum into teachers' mindsets around the online world, because as we said, we don't want the online world being their primary educator. We talk parents, but let's not forget about the teachers who have 6 hours every day with these little people. And that online space is often so foreign. I'd love to shift the conversation for teachers, and some teachers do it amazingly, where they're engaged in the online world and can speak some of the shared language around the games they might be playing, and hence the exposure. So an example would be the game like Roblox, that so many kids go mad for in primary schools.
Right.
I would love, and unfortunately, that's a game where there's been lots of sexual content appear in there that kids have been exposed to, once again, sending all sorts of mixed messages. But from a teacher perspective, most teachers I chat to are aware of the name of the game, but I would love for the mindset to be, okay, I've got kids in my room who live and breathe the online space. It's their interest, it's their passion. Me as a teacher can't be in the mindset of, well, it's not my thing being in the online world. The fact is, if you're a teacher, the kids are immersed in that world. So I think it's almost our obligation to have some information that, what is the game, how is it played, some of the language around it, because then that starts, and everything that I know both Carly and yourself, Vanessa, are huge on these conversations, because if a teacher doesn't have the language to start talking around that online world, they're going to find it very hard to open up any of those conversations. So I guess that would probably be my one wish for schools, the teachers, and it's a slow burn and we can't expect overnight for this to be the case, but part of my work and in schools is encouraging teachers to be that little bit more engaged in the online space, because it is what our kids live and breathe.
And the best teacher of Roblox to the teacher would be the kids.
The kids asking them,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I just say to my kids, tell me
Yeah.
how that game works. Talk me through it. And I pretend to be interested when it tells me all about it. And but part of child safety standards is to empower children with language and the ability to speak to adults. And so if they know that you're interested in Roblox, or at least faking interest, but you are interested, they'll something happened in Roblox I want to tell you about. That might encourage that language. Carly, you're nodding your head. Would you agree?
Yeah, I am laughing a little bit about the pretending to be interested, because 3 kids that are online, and I hear a lot of detail about what's happening in Minecraft and every other thing they're doing. So, however, listening to the good stuff, the positive stuff, the fun, what they're laughing about, means that when there's an issue, they're going to be much more likely to say, hey, there's been a problem. And reassuring them, as Marty and I always talk about, that if you come to us with a problem, us parents, then we will not take the device away. We will help you problem solve whatever it is, because, and then again, though, bringing up the conversations, and that's that parents needing and me encouraging them to open up conversations, for example, related to all things. Like, so my clients, when I'm talking to young people, as soon as I'm able to talk to them about using the language around porn or pornography or dick pics or this or that, once they know, oh yeah, she's okay to talk about that stuff, it's open, then all of a sudden floodgates. Oh, I'll tell you what happened the other day. My friend got sent this and that happened. And so you're giving them permission. Otherwise they'll err on maybe not, because I don't know where they stand on that issue.
And that's about that, using that common language, as Marty was saying, as though you do understand it, and giving them permission. That's right. I've got 3 kids too. And sometimes I get too much deep information, too much detail about things going on in life. And I'm like, well, you created this, but I have to be okay with it. And I'm glad for it. But my goodness, it's confronting as an adult, isn't it?
Because I guess looking at the two of you and how much conversations you have with your kids, the other end of the spectrum, if you wished it away, would be 0 good and then the 0 bad, which is exactly what we're aiming not to have, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so just to explore that a bit, Marty, means like no conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So no conversations means, yes, as an adult, you're like, oh, I don't have to hear about Minecraft or Among Us, but as we are diving deep into today, that also means that for all those challenging, tricky conversations, you won't hear about those as well. So
that's exactly right.
Absolutely.
The core to sexuality education is connection with your kids. It's more about how you say, your tone of voice and how you do things rather than what you say. People say, I don't know what language to use. It's just more about being connected and saying, this is really hard to talk about. This is embarrassing, or, and I find your games foreign to me, but I really want to understand the world that you're living in with those games. And that's the same with sex and sexuality, teachable moments. Wow, that thing on the TV is really making me feel uncomfortable, and I'm not exactly sure why. And it's because you kids are watching it, and just having these conversations. When you say, Carly, it's just opening up teachable moments.
Yeah, the teachable moments thing. So many parents I talk to, no, I haven't had that chat, or I have had that chat, as if it's sort of a finite one conversation that incorporated in, and just shifting that mindset to it is just an ongoing looking. A friend of mine who's a teacher, she uses the phrase caught, not taught, about kids' way of learning, which is that idea of they just collect up through role modeling, through weaving it into day in and day out. So they catch stuff as it happens, as opposed to,
you mean caught, C-A-U-G-H-T, as in C-O-U-R-T. So they catch information.
Yeah, they catch it instead of you sitting down to teach them in one conversation about, all things sexuality. No, they're just going to catch it as you go about your day to day, as you said, with a teachable moment when you see someone down the street and something's happening, or you see something on social media, or you hear a song on the radio. Gosh, songs on the radio in my family are constantly a source of conversation because of language or sexual content or drug references. And
talking in the car. They're a captive audience, facing forward, less embarrassing. And, and you may not get anything back, but you say a statement, they will listen, they catch that information. And Marty, you were talking before about the whole school approach, and we were talking before this interview, talking about capacity building of teachers and adults to have the language and the knowledge to incorporate cyber safety and sexuality conversations every day, all the time. That court idea is great. You know, Marty, as you're saying, they could be having a maths lesson and they talk about Roblox, you know, and then have a conversation about something in there. How would that look, Marty, for sexuality education?
Yeah, I guess there's so much in like teaching, like literacy. Every teacher teaches literacy every day, and the content that kids are writing about, whether it's instructional, whether it's persuasive writing, there's lots of scope. And I encourage teachers all the time when I'm working with them is to look a little bit broader around if you're teaching the skills of a persuasive piece, it's a great opportunity whilst learning the writing skills to be unpacking other topics whilst also the explicit writing. So whether it is a sexuality, and it might be in older grades in primary, particular, you might be discussing about imagery online and how that influences young people. Use it, and we don't have to set aside an opportunity to go, let's have our sexuality afternoon and we're learning about it. You've got your writing block in the morning, and you're teaching persuasive writing. Kids have to decide for and against and have all those critical thinking ideas. Why isn't the topic something relevant and current to them, like your body image on TikTok? And kids will tell, as we said before, you're suddenly talking their language. They will come up with it. So that's probably, in a nutshell, what I'd love teachers to start shifting the ability to weave in digital citizenship, online safety, sexuality in a way that's not, let's have an afternoon or safer internet day, and that's our one way to tick it off, if that makes sense. Weaving it into...
My children's high school, for literacy for English, instead of English, it's sports writing. So the kids who aren't really inclined to do English, they get to write about sport, and they're learning all their grammar and all of that in sport. Yes. And as you said, Marty, it just should be everyday conversation. And teachers could go to the Respectful Relationships curriculum, pick a topic out of there to give them that confidence of the content, and then make that into today's persuasive text. And in grade prep, sexuality education in maths, rather than counting the coloured cars going past so we could put it in a bar graph, let's count the different coloured eye colour in the room. Now, different colour eye colour in the room is the part of human sexuality that's age appropriate for prep kids, because it's about two cells from two humans getting together to create eye colour. It's not about sex, you know, and that's that open dialogue. You've answered my question a bit, Marty, already about what would you like adults to know about keeping kids safe as far as their sexual health being in school settings. Before, I might get you to elaborate a bit more on that in a minute, but Carly, I just wanted to touch on pornography a bit with your clients, because I know that that's coming up a lot. If I said to you, you know, there's probably 20 things, but what's your number one thing that we could improve the health and well-being of kids in private settings as far as their access to digital devices and the internet, and from a sexuality focus? You know, this isn't about pornography, this interview here. There's heaps of information on both of our websites, especially mine, about talking about pornography, but talk about, you know, you see it all the time, don't you?
Yeah. So
how can we improve their well-being?
Yeah, so I think parents, there's a couple of layers to it that, especially at home, that I'd love, which is so often parents say things like, I don't want to talk about those things because I want to protect their innocence. They're too young, Carly. I don't want to bring that up for them. And I guess through what's evidence-based and research-based and what we understand about the brain is that when kids have language around these topics, they are actually safer because they're empowered to make those better decisions. So parents worry as well about that you said it before about they don't know what to say. And from the feedback from the kids I work with, they just need parents to say something. It doesn't have to
anything. Yeah, it's just giving permission. Yep.
Just a curious question. So rather than if your kid in the car comes home and says, what's a head job? Rather than going, oh, don't say that, that's a bad word, or don't talk about that, disgusting, or that, shutting it down, just a curious question like, oh, where did you hear that about? And if you don't know how to answer or talk about what is a head job, buy yourself time. I always say to parents, you don't have to lock yourself into answering then and there that moment. you can just say to them, awesome, given we've got littlies in the car right now, or if you need time to sort of get your head around what you want to say, let's have a chat about it later tonight. But kids are so sensitive. They're watching us to see, is this an okay topic? Can I go there?
Yeah, keep going.
No, I was going to say, I know you talk about, and I see this with my adult clients all the time, so many adults that I work with have so much shame attached to all things sexuality for all sorts of reasons, and they don't have a positive sense of that at all. And the joke lately with a couple of clients was, did anyone ever say anything to you about sexuality? And usually the answer is no, like nothing. Occasionally someone got dropped a book, maybe if they're lucky, but nothing. And then they're as parents thinking, how on earth do I bring this stuff up with my kids? But as long as you ask a curious question in a really calm, play it cool, Marty, I always say, playing it cool, that's going to give kids permission to keep talking and talk again next time.
The key issue is for parents to be askable and tellable. And the best way for you to be that, if you're sitting and thinking to yourself, I'm giving them the don't ask me that, I can't go there, often because you've got layer upon layer upon layer of stuff in your head, excuse the pun, but we have to strip back those layers and just respond to the simple question or situation in front of us. The best way parents can be that askable, tellable parent is go and do a bit of research, bit of reading, bit of soul searching, what's pushing my buttons. But your default position is a positive one. So no matter the question that comes up, positive face. It's okay to say, I'm a bit shocked about that question. It's a bit out of my mindset today, or no one ever spoke to me about this and I haven't got the words for you. So, for example, the blowjob one, often parents they'll freak out and they'll think about their last experience if that's related to them, all those sorts of things. It's a simple question. Expect these questions from kids. It's typical behaviour for kids to ask questions about what they will have heard in playground. And in our positive generic way, we would say, well, as you know, sex is just for adults' minds and bodies. And one thing that some adults like to do is use their mouths with bodies, and they might use their mouth on people's genitals. And the kids will go, that's disgusting, what the heck, all that. And you say, exactly, that's disgusting to you because you're a kid and it's not for kids. It's for adult minds and bodies only, and adults like it. And it takes many, many years just because people turn the age of 16, which is the legal age to do. So these are, I'm adding in more and more depending on the age of the child. 16 is the legal age, but that doesn't mean their minds and bodies are ready for it. Everybody's minds and bodies take a long time to get ready for it, and it's when that person's ready. And then you could go into consent, and you could go on forever, and then the kids roll their eyes and they've had enough. Marty, Kika, did you want to respond to that?
I was just going to say, Vanessa, about, adults needing to do their own bit of learning. I was only referring a friend to your podcast the other day, the joke was that phrase that you've got about you might even get your own sexuality education, because she was joking about, it was just a non-topic in her upbringing, not one single word was ever said. And now she's got 3 kids to try and be educating and open about, and she wants to be, but just is a bit of a loss how to go about it. So I said, get yourself informed.
I'm sure at all of our parent sessions, like I get parents say to me, that's the first sexuality education I've ever had. Marty, you probably get, that's the first time anyone's taught me how to use a device or electronics. So Marty, how could we improve the health and wellbeing sexuality wise for kids in a school setting from your experience, from that whole school approach? Just to wrap up, what you think we really need to focus on, because without getting into it, the 3 of us know how dire the situation is, where kids are currently needing us to look after their health and wellbeing much better than we are.
Yeah, I think that you hit the nail on the head with the whole school approach, is that schools that value this and put the time and resources into parents, offering resources, and it might not just be a one-off, but it's sharing resources with parents through newsletters and updates. The teachers themselves, as I've already touched on, how important they are, because they are such role models, such teachers for their kids, and the students themselves. When you can get all 3 of them in, from my perspective, in a safe online space, it then leads to the sexuality education coming that without those influences so catastrophic, because I use the word catastrophic, kids in
I agree
junior
with you.
grades. Yeah, kids being exposed in junior grades with parents either not having the understanding around, oh, does TikTok really have people, and the song last year, Cardi B, Wet Ass Pussy, that went absolutely viral on TikTok. So your grade twos on TikTok, they're also listening to those lyrics, and this is where that word catastrophic. So I think if we go back a step to improve sexuality education and almost buy parents some time to have all these conversations without being bombarded with all those online influences, which are contrary to everything that you as a parent want to be sharing, is getting that little bit more informed around appropriate ages to be starting social media. So that's our key message we're always sharing. And
so that appropriate age before they get
Yeah.
onto it, and
Absolutely.
supervise at the very least.
Absolutely. And it's not about never social media. That's not a realistic approach to have. And I would much rather, the minimum age is 13, as a lot of people are aware, not everyone, but social media has a terms and service. But I would much rather, to be honest, an 11-year-old using social media with a parent who's very participating, if there's another participative, in that online space and having conversations. Oh, who's that you're following? Okay, let's have a look through. I would rather that. Yes, they're not 13, but much more than, oh, they've hit 13, off you go, social media is all yours, you've hit the age. So I think that's the more important thing, is how they're using it. And I know that word, being parents being participants, is something Kayleen Kerr, who's another great online safety educator, shares that phrase. And I really love it, that parents, I think the mindset I would love more parents to have is to be participants in what their kids are doing.
It astounds me and distresses me what I see from my kids, of kids not being supervised online, because I'm supervising my kids. I go into the room often, checking. I was saying to you before, I didn't use the all the blockages and all those sort of things on the kids' devices. It wasn't working for us. I've gone with the approach of teaching to them to be digital consumers. And be conscious consumers, like I would suggest with pornography as well. They're consumers of it. What does it mean to be a consumer of it? And getting them to tell me about those things, and always being approachable, never take the devices off them. And because one day, and I'm starting to see that, I've got a 16-year-old now, they're on their own. They will use it without my supervision, and I want to have been a part of that. So we sort of opened it up that way. So parents, thinking about that, letting them on. Gee, I wish all the parents would get together. Sometimes I feel like ringing everyone and saying, can't we just all say no to this new game, please? We're not parenting enough. I think. Carly, with that, just for some finishing remarks about parenting in this digital and sexual wellbeing space, what would you say about the parenting enough? You might agree with me.
No, absolutely. I talk a lot in our cyber safety sessions about boundaries and parents needing to step up and making decisions in line with what we know our children need, not what they want. And the gap there is enormous, and you won't be popular for your decisions as a parent, but that's okay. And in fact, that's an indicator that you're doing what you need to do. If, as I say to parents, if you're not, if your kids aren't giving you flack for the decisions, then are your boundaries firm enough? Have you got good boundaries in place? And having conversations. So my kids know, ask about a particular game or a movie, or like, I'll always look at it. I don't just say no. I said, okay, let's have a look. All right, it's rated 18 plus because of this, and this. One of my kids has been on my back for months about GTA, Grand Theft Auto, and the violence, the strip club access in the game, where you can access the strip club to go and watch, and for all the reasons. So we've had a lot of conversations about, I get it that other kids are watching and playing that game, but these are the reasons why I'm not okay with it, and why I don't think it's healthy for your brain. Like we talk about healthy for your body, the foods you eat, the water you drink, exercising.
It's how to ride a bike, teach swimming lessons, food. Well, so is sexual health and cyber safety.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's right. And you know, the amount of kids playing those games when they shouldn't be, and I can see the distress and whatever that's happening, and parents need to do that. And we have to put a bit of effort in. We would go and do so much research to buy a car, wouldn't we? So take the time to go and do a bit of parenting research so that you know those boundaries, and you can sit with your kids being angry at you, and you say to your kids, it's because I love you. I know it drives you crazy, but it's because I love you, and it is how it is, you know. And the kids appreciate it. They know you're right deep down.
Well, the beauty, and I share this a lot, and it gives me a lot of comfort, is the beauty of my work is because I get to work with a lot of young adults, they will often share where they get to that place looking back on their parents and saying, I thought my mum and dad were the meanest, strictest, awful parents in the entire world. Now I get it. I get why they did what they did, but at the time they're not going to. And that's why I say to parents, they're not going to agree with you. We're not aiming for that. It's
typically expected childhood behaviour to not agree with your parents who are putting inadequate boundaries to protect them. And just back to that question you said about people, they're going to lose their innocence. Kids will lose their innocence if something happens to them that they didn't expect or they didn't know about. That's when they will lose their innocence, not by being empowered with good, adequate, age-appropriate information that's given to them in a positive light and tools on how to use the internet and be safe. I've loved our conversation today. We could talk for hours and hours, couldn't we?
Yes.
Marty, can you just tell us where people can find more information from you both? And we will put links wherever this video is or audio. But how can people work with you too?
Yeah, absolutely. Inform and empower is what we go by. Primary schools is what we really work in predominantly. If you want to follow us, we're on Facebook. We share lots of content, Carly, little videos. I'll share more cyber safety related content specifically. So jump onto Facebook, and our website are the best ways to keep in touch with us. And if you're a school out there listening, we'd also love to hear from you, to come and work with you, check out the things we can offer you. It'd be awesome. Thanks, Vanessa, very much.
Terrific. Carly, did you want to add to that, or you're happy?
No, that's all good.
Okay, terrific. I was watching some videos on your blog last night, actually, and I loved the one about the big feelings. So parents, go over to Inform Empower and look at the blog about sitting with big feelings, because both of these topics bring up lots of big feelings.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for your time. And parents, thank you for being here. You are already helping your kids by just listening to these sort of parenting information sessions. There's so many out there, so do inform yourselves. Thanks, everyone. Take care.